Okay.
Okay, this me. All right, great. So if you guys need the record, please just ask it from Reasa after the meeting. She'll send it to the group, hopefully. But yeah, continuing from the country stance, as I've mentioned, it's good of you to mention that Brunei's position is quite clear in the sense that although we want a solution to the problem, we in a way do not want to fully involve ourselves because, as you know, our geographic location does not require us to actively contribute, in this case, resources um, in the form of ships and stuff like that, because we're usually limited to our littoral zones as well as our EEZs. So it's good of you to have mentioned that. Although it is also good that we show our firm stance on the matter. So good job on that end. I'm sure both of you wrote this together, or I'm assuming, which areas did you guys particularly focus on? I'm not sure if Savan Rich focused on one area while Retsa focused on another. If you guys work together, that's good. Um, but if you have any comments, feel free to let me know as I go through the material. So yeah, I want to start talking about some of these comments that I've made apart from the wording suggestions. I want to talk about the comments. So I'm not sure who wrote this phrase. Is it Reza or Sovan Rich?
It's me.
This okay. So I've noticed that, let me just read it out for everyone. So as well as the side effects of the COVID-19 recession as a probable catalyst should be held water by the ASEAN community that the guard against maritime piracy isn't to be lenient. And although so much has already been done, much more needs to be done. So I think I kind of understand the intention, but as I've already mentioned in the comment, I think we should find a way to simplify our message here. Um, as you know, when we do like essay writing, we have a tendency to, write these kinds of flowery statements. As you would know, I do the same thing with essays. But in the position paper, I think the most important tip is for anyone that's starting is you are writing to be understood in this case. So if there is any way for this to be simplified clearly, short, concise, and to the point, that would be much better in a position paper. But of course, if this was an essay, I would appreciate the play on words and the utilization of the sentences. Terms such as catalyst, should be held water. I mean, it's like a rhetorical expression in many ways. But yeah, I think that's my initial comments on this part. Because if I were like, say, the delegate of another country, um, what's my prime focus in this message? Would it be how the writer wrote the message or what they are trying to tell me in this case? Because there could be two sides. Now, if you want it to be like firm, you would definitely try to word it in a way that is, direct and clearly states what we want. So in this case, we don't want Southeast Asia to be lenient despite the COVID-19 recession. Um, Although we've done so much, we must continue on this onward march to improve the current situation in our seas. So I think when you frame it that way, it clearly lets the audience know what you want instead of I'm sure Reza, you know the idea of beating around the bush
Yeah.
expression. We don't
Okay.
want to beat around the bush as a delegation. But yeah, that's my comment. I think my recommendation is to find a way to rephrase this sentence to make it more direct, not too direct, because I'm going to talk to one of the teams on that because they made some comments which we'll talk about later if you guys will still be here. But yeah, that's my first comment. Country stands, not much to highlight. As I've said, some word choices could be improved. In this case, we should use Brunei Darussalam in most cases because that is the preferred address for Brunei. Western countries would just call us Brunei, but the delegation usually likes calling itself Brunei Darussalam. So I think we should stay consistent with that. Um, Okay, my next attention now moves to these ones. I'm sure all of you can see it in the screen. Multiple abbreviations. Now, although it is good to cite multiple mechanisms addressing maritime piracy, I think the bigger question is it safe to assume that all delegates know what these mechanisms are? That's a question to Riasa and Suvanrij. Feel free to answer, one of you. My question being is it a safe assumption for all delegates to be aware of what Brunei is talking about with these abbreviations?
No. No.
Gotcha.
So I think that's another thing so in your words or in your observations, which of these mechanisms are the most important ones
Um,
based on your research? Like, just give me like three very important mechanisms.
if three, that would be the RECAAP, the ADM UNCLOS, and the AMF.
Okay, and that's good. That's why we don't have to necessarily name very well known ones like the recap. I think everyone would know that recap, but ARF. Now ARF could mean many things. So I think if sorry, what was the most important once again?
The AMF. The AMF.
AMS. AMS, what
AMF.
is that?
That one. The
Okay.
ASEAN Maritime Forum.
Okay, so the ASEAN Maritime Forum, so the AMF.
The AMF.
So I think we should highlight in the level of importance the most important mechanisms from most important to probably important. You know, you don't want to say least important, but they're all important in a sense, but definitely some more important than others. So the recap is one, the AMF is another. Did we just lose someone? It's okay. You
ADM
guys are still
UNCLOS.
here. So yeah, like I said, let's focus on citing the most important ones and just say and other related mechanisms because that is enough understanding for others that we are proactively engaging in these mechanisms, not to mention the largest mechanisms available for maritime piracy. So that's my second comment because remember, in a way, this is eating up so much space. Look at this, one line full of abbreviations. And it is not a safe assumption to think that everyone knows what you're talking about because some might not, because one delegate could ask, what is an ACDFM? It's because these are some of these mechanisms may not be known by everyone, so it's best for us to focus on the biggest ones. Like when I cited in the trafficking, I cited the United Nations, ILO, and ASEAN. Now ILO stands for the International Labor Organization. So you want to cite very big organizations because in part, when you cite those, it is already understood that it shows your country's earnest participation in these mechanisms and many more. That's why you would say other related mechanisms. So yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. So I like what you did with the other ones. You have written the full name and stated the abbreviation. That way it gives the reader the opportunity to understand what you're referring to because the other ones are just not, the AMF, ACDFM may not just be understood by everyone. So that's just another comment I've had. But overall, I think the country stance is clear, concise, and to the point, which is what we need. Um, of course, you mentioned that has come to determine that its small coastline should not dwarf its naval capacity and has declared an increase of 2.7% for its fiscal year defense budget. Okay, so that shows our willingness through military modernization. So that's good. Economic blueprint, the blue economy. So as you know, we are going to talk about the blue economy because I think this will be a very hot topic if we decide to push through. But as you know, if you want to create debate, uh, uh, to be honest, if this recommendation passes without any country complaining, either we're a very good delegation or they just didn't do enough research into their countries. So, so that's so in this case, we're going to talk about that next. So moving on to proposed solutions, which in my opinion is the most important part of your paper, because this is what's going to appear in the resolutions. So we need to look at this with special attention. So, so basically, with regards to maritime security conventions, Reza and I had some discussions about it, and you had some initial questions regarding the ACAMP solution. And your question regarding, what was that? Let me see. Binding. Yeah. So what was your question exactly with that, with binding?
I wanted to know, like, for your solution, the ACAMP solution, is it like a piece of convention where everyone signs, or do you want to like create a mechanism, a body?
Well, as like I've said earlier, typically if you're going to talk about United Nations conventions, these are typically understood as legally binding frameworks, right? And in the case of ASEAN, the only legally binding framework that is known to existence, as you've already correctly pointed out, is the Treaty of Amity amongst nations. Because as you know, ASEAN typically is, unlike the EU, we're not friendly to the idea of having legally binding instruments that basically imposes on our nations, right? Because of the principle of non-interference. So for us, a convention typically is a regional mechanism, as you've come to know from the ASEAN Convention on counter, combating trafficking, something like, if I can recall correctly. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is of a regional convention for us, it's a mechanism of cooperation. Now, you've correctly pointed out that we already have the ASEAN Maritime Forum, correct?
Yes.
So should we recommend strengthening the AMF, or do you think we should introduce a convention which basically solidifies it as a national issue, or a regional issue for that matter? That's my question for the defense ministers, and that's for you to decide. That's not for me to decide. So this is something I want you guys to discuss with one another, how you want to move into this direction. Because remember, I'm here to give advice. You're still going to decide what you want to write, because number one, you're arguing for it, not me. So that's why I just want you to have some discussion on how you want to move with proposal number one with regards to the exploration of the benefits of maritime security conventions. So first of all, the question being is, are you focusing only on a regional convention, or do you want us to be more engaged in multinational conventions where it involves many countries, right?
I want, wait.
Please comment. Yeah.
I wanted to refer to the conventions under the IMO, International Maritime Bureau.
Okay.
Can you let me share my slides?
Wait. I'll have to stop screen share if I do that though. Let me see. Wait. Okay, I'm gonna stop screen share. So please share your slides, Phoebe.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see it?
Wait, let me see. It's loading. Let's see if it opens. It's, I think, still loading. So I'm not sure if, can the other members see? Or is it just me? Okay. So it's not just me.
Wait,
Or for the meantime, while we wait, maybe if you can just give us a quick briefing on what you want to achieve with this proposal.
So I read a report from it's called General Observation ARF report, workshop on maritime security in Southeast Asia. This was in 2009.
Okay.
And then, they like interviewed all the representatives and they accumulated this. They said it was, I quote, "It was also apparent from the discussions that Southeast Asian participants tended to categorize areas into 3 distinct subregions. So they don't see it as all Southeast Asia seas, they see it as the South China Sea problem, the Malacca Strait problem, and then the Sulu and the Sulawesi Sea problem."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the importance of the distinction in that each sub-region is focused on separate issues that lend themselves to different types of solutions. That is
Mhm.
why like we have the mini sub what agreements.
BIMP, IAGA, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
So
okay.
it is especially useful to separate out the South China Sea too because wait, it is especially useful to separate out the South China Sea as it is a sub-region
Okay.
least favorable for cooperative approaches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Okay.
the South China Sea itself is also categorized into
Wait,
many.
did we lose connection? Okay.
Uh,
Yes, I can still. I think you were cutting off a little bit, but yeah,
can
yeah,
you
I can hear you
see it
now.
now? Wait, can you see the slides now?
No, I can't see it. I don't know. It's probably not the internet or something like that. I'm gonna assume it's the internet. But yeah, I understand what you mean.
Can I
Based
just
on that
copy it?
information.
Can I
So
just copy
basically, so yeah, maybe you can just type it in
yeah,
the chat so we can read it. Yeah, so I understand where you're coming from with regards to how Southeast Asia is treating seas differently, not as a whole approach, whole ASEAN seas approach, but rather on a case-to-case
wait,
basis.
can you see it now?
No, I just see some gray screen. But anyways, it's fine. I already understand. I kind of already know what you mean. So allow me to add some input on that. So yeah, that's which is why I want you guys to talk about this further, right? Because as you've mentioned, Southeast Asia treats the situation on a case-to-case basis. So it depends on the sea. So let now I'm gonna play devil's advocate. In this case, I'm gonna represent maybe in mainland Southeast Asian country, Cambodia, or in this case. So you mentioned maritime security conventions, acknowledging that Brunei said that this is something that is treated differently by Southeast Asian countries. Why should we commit or why should we work to address something at this level when an issue, as you've mentioned, like in the Sulu Sea, can be addressed by three countries like Indonesia, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, right? So why should Cambodia be concerned about situation in Sulu Sea? Right? So
Yeah.
these are the kinds of things you want to anticipate, right? Because ASEAN, we look at when we recommend solutions, we want to involve all the nations because it's a consensus-based thing. So if you're just gonna, because I've noticed that you've made focuses a lot on maritime states. So what's stopping Cambodia, Laos, or even Thailand from saying that, well, this seems to be a matter that's best addressed in the sub-regional level. In this case, a matter to be addressed by the likes of Brunei, Singapore, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia because it concerns their seas, to which, in this case, Cambodia does not concern itself of, right? So these are the many things that you should think of from a diplomatic standpoint, right? When you make a recommendation, what recommendation is best to compel everyone to get on board to, right? Because Cambodia, if we look at as you mentioned, the South China Sea, which is another very disputed topic, as I've explained earlier to you regarding the situation on the blue economy and why it may be very challenging. It's mainly because of the economic interests and political interests of countries that exist. So we cannot ignore that fact, right? So my recommendation for you is to review number one and see whether or not this is a viable recommendation. Will it be really seriously considered by ASEAN, or will it only result in its eventual omission from the text because it's just too contentious of a topic that it may not gain enough interest from mainland Southeast Asia? Because remember, you have to look at the two geographic Southeast Asias. There's two Southeast Asias in the sense that there's the mainland and the maritime, right? Obviously, number one talks about maritime Southeast Asia. So that's something that we should definitely look at. If we're going to talk about maritime security conventions to ensure the free flow of goods into the South China Sea, then, only then, will countries start thinking, oh, they're right. We should consider it because number one, all trade passes through the Straits of Malacca in many ways. A lot of the key trade, oil, goods, etc., passes through the Straits of Malacca. So if you frame your recommendation along those lines, then obviously it will benefit a lot of mainland Southeast Asian countries because they rely on those trade. Okay. So, wow,
Mantra,
I'm sorry.
can I say something?
Yes, please.
Wait, let me just.
You, you wanted to say something?
Um. So wait, I looked into like all the important maritime security conventions that I think other countries should sign. But the surprising thing is that Laos, which is a mainland country, they have already signed all of these documents. Instead, the ones who did not sign were, like, for example, for the SUA convention, the ones who did not ratify it was Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So now our mission is to find out why that is the case, right? Because they're maritime countries and they didn't sign. So that's one of the many things that, as a homework for the in preparation for the final draft, you have to try and figure out why that is the case, and you will need to review the recommendations, which is the most important part of your paper. And of course, we have to reduce the number because it should be at least 2 pages. Or it's who was speaking. Uh, Okay, anyways, that should be fine. Our 30 minutes has concluded, but I will be open to questions after I finish talking to the finance team, which I think is next, right? Sarivuta and
Yeah,
Bonkong.
the finance teams are next.
Yes, I will be back with Reza and Savan Rich after I finish the review for the other team. So if you could, Reza, please mute so I can talk to Sarivuta and Bonkong, who is still joining us. So how are you, Sarivuta?
Hi, I'm good.
Yes, good week so
Okay.
far. Tiring.
Yes. A little bit busy though.
Yeah, it's normal. Everyone's busy these days, eh?
Right.
But anyways, thank you for joining, and I'm very happy to have read your paper.
Thank you.
So as you know, I've made some changes in terms of words, word things like that. And I've looked at it. So who's speaking? Let me mute first. That way we're not disturbed. Okay. Probably Serevuta was with someone. So okay. Anyway, I just wanted to. Wait, is Bonkong already here? Where is he?
No, he's not. Let me chart him.
He's waiting to join, I think, or I think he's trying to join. We'll wait for him. For the meantime, we'll start the review. This paper. All right, is Bonkong in? I'm gonna admit Bonkong. We'll wait for him to join. Let's see if he can join. All right. Good evening, Bonkong. Thank you for joining us. Um, as you know, your time for review of your papers are beginning. So I would like to give you guys your feedback as we work to finalize your draft paper. So I want to start by, can you hear me clearly? If you can't speak, please type so I know that.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
All right, perfect. So yeah, I want to start with your papers. As you know, I've made some documents, some changes, I guess, with the wording. So far, I really liked the clear flow of your position, in this case, the paper. So you provided a comprehensive background, of course, clearly stating the government's intentions, which is good, and its targets for greater economic integration. And based on just reading the plain text of your paper, you're clearly showing Brunei's position as one of the nations that are leading the way in this push for digitalization. So that's a very good way of putting it. Of course, I just wanted to mention some key words. As you know, in diplomacy, words is important, and how we use them can either make or break our proposals. And that's why I've made some corrections to some of the words and sentence structures in this case. I'm just curious to ask, who wrote the term with economic common sense? Is this Bonkong or Seributa?
Me.
Okay, so I want to make a quick comment on this. Now, although it's okay in essay writing, in the diplomatic realm, it may not sound the most pleasing to the ear, right? And out of curiosity, and just to prove a point on that, why do you think this would be an I would say improper term to use? This is a question to Bunkong and Saributa. Why would you think I considered this an improper term for use?
It might be informal. To
Yes,
use.
yeah, but as you know, just number one, think about the setting, right? You are talking to the finance ministers or senior officials of sovereign nations. The last thing you want to say in a paper is to let basically telling them that you guys don't know what you're talking about. That's why you should just use your common sense.
Right. Yeah. A little bit rude, huh?
Yeah, so that's one thing. So I think as a future reference, I've made a recommendation to change that phrase basically to sound more palatable to the ear. So this case, based on this economic assessment. Okay. Now that's a diplomatic term, economic assessment. That's perfectly fine, diplomatic language. It's usually as it sounds more formal. You're basically informing your peers that you have conducted these assessments and this is your findings. Because if you say economic common sense, then I don't know, it sounds a bit off. So just be aware that when you're writing and also talking during these meetings, avoid using language or terms that may sound offending to your fellow delegates. Remember, you could use this in debates, right? I'm sure some of you have already engaged in debates, especially in the UN, things like that. But this is ASEAN. This is consensus based. And the last thing you want to do is have a disagreement with another nation and reach no consensus. And believe me, believe it or not, insulting another delegate can derail any progress in many ways, because it really depends on how they react to that statement. So that's something to take into consideration. Um, Other than that, everything is solid. As I've mentioned, Brand Darussalam is confident this is the right time. So we're definitely in favor of digitalization, which I think is consistent with Wawasan 2035, which is Brunei's target overall. Um, so when you mentioned the nation of, I think that's not necessary. Just Brunei Darussalam is typically understood, so that's fine. And let's see what else. Which lay out key strategies in line with the financial sector blueprint of 2020, 2016 to 2025. Now, typically I would just try to shorten it because it's already understood. But if you want to keep it, that's completely up to you. It's just a suggestion on my part. But yes, just last month, Brunei Darussalam launched the Brunei Economic Blueprint, which provides guidelines for the country to achieve the goals of Brunei Vision 2035. All these establishments are intended to advance Brunei Darussalam's position in digital currency that will further increase its economic efficiency and stimulus. Okay, so far so good. Proposals. Okay, so in order to turn this vision into a reality, or to make this vision, up to you which ones you prefer, to turn this vision into a reality, firstly, nations should ensure that their populations are well informed about the benefits of digital payment and the way to use this low-cost alternative and time-saving solution effectively. Secondly, mechanisms for joint cooperation should be considered to meet such ends. Brunei Darussalam proposes the following recommendations. Brunei Darussalam proposes that throughout ASEAN, the distribution of digital literacy and public awareness on digital payments should be prioritized. To achieve this end, Brunei Darussalam recommends member states to raise the public's awareness on digital payments, or I'm not sure, payments, through all means and improve education systems by adding the skills required for the 21st century, especially in key areas of technology and digital literacy. Number two, Brunei Darussalam urges all member states to work closely and improve the region's cooperation within cyberspace in order to build digital trust and market confidence. So, my question for proposal number two is, how would you elaborate cyberspace? How can you achieve this cooperation, if ever a delegate asks? Because cyberspace is a rather broad term, so out of curiosity, I want to know how you guys would explain what you mean by the second recommendation. Feel free to speak. Comments?
I think that Asian country can work together, like share the informations about the cyber security or something else like that.
Okay, cybersecurity. So, okay. So I think for us to better clarify this recommendation, I think it's good to expound on the cyberspace thing. Maybe clarify what you mean by that in the proposal. That way, the delegations or the delegates would know. So that's just another tip. The third one, Brunei Darussalam recommends that all member states commit to establishing an independent advisory board, the ASEAN Advisory Council for Digital Economy. Now, the ASEAN what was the previous? The ASEAN Promotion Board. Now, this is just out of typical tradition. I'm not sure if ASEAN typically uses the term promotion board, but they do use advisory council. So that may be something that you'd want to use as a name instead, because it sounds more official in a way, because the promotion board, I don't know. But that's a recommendation. Feel free to use it if you want. The ACCDE, so which consists of all member states as representatives. This board shall be formed with the purpose of providing strategic direction, guidance, and advice to the ASEAN economic community, as well as all the member states, to ensure the economic policies within ASEAN supports the development of greater digital economic integration within ASEAN. Okay. So what is the initial comment in this regard, regarding this last phrase? Strategic direction. Okay. That's my my question to Bonkong and Sarivuta. How would you explain by saying strategic direction? What do you mean by this? Is it a means to recommend to countries or to tell countries what to do? That's something I want to clarify. What is the intention of strategic direction in your point of view?
In my point of view, I think I refer this question to like a guidance or something like a recommendation to the Asian member state.
Okay. Okay, so clearly it's advisory, right? Just to be clear.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Because you might have to clarify it, because other countries may interpret strategic direction or direction in general as a means of telling their countries what to do. And as you know, ASEAN principles, non-interference. So, and typically countries in ASEAN do not give up their sovereignty that easily to an advisory council. So they will listen to recommendations, but they will not take orders. So if ever they start asking about strategic direction, be prepared to answer, clarify what you mean by that, because typically they will recommend to change the phrase to fit it, to be more neutral. You don't have to change it. Just be aware that they might ask what you mean by that. So guidance is okay. That's normal. Advice, perfectly normal terminology used in, in these types of resolution writing. So yeah, let's move on to the other one. Brunei requests all member states to nominate representatives who are experts in app development, website development, computational, economic, experimental. Okay, this is a lot of field of expertise. Do you think this is better placed? This is better combined with number 3? Because I don't know about you, because I think this sounds like people that should be in the ACCDE. So let me know what you guys think. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
My intention on clause 4 is to request all the ASEAN member states to actually begin working on creating the
AMU.
The AMU.
Yes.
So you can say that right now they're not teams working on that, and we have to start executing the goal, not just saying then let it go. So nominating a team, while on clause 3 is more of a guidance and advisory.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So clearly, the next question a delegate would have is, who will be in charge of overseeing these people? In this case, who will be making sure that they're doing the actual research? Because there's a lot of experts: website development, computational economic, experimental economic, macro, micro, economic methodology, national finance. Who's gonna watch over these people? That's my question.
So the number to how many people should working in the team depending. I haven't put a number yet, but I think it would be necessary. I think we will discuss with Bun Kong later to how many
Okay.
people should be included. But I think there should be 2 for each area, and then they will be working independently with other ASEAN member states. So, for example, Cambodia appointed 8, 12, whatever the number is, and then that 12 people will work with another 12 people from Vietnam, Laos, Brunei, and all of that. They will work together as a large group of people, around 100 members, to establish the AMU. Yeah,
Okay.
and
But yeah. Sorry, continue.
making sure that they fit nicely on their country's economic situation. And this is like, it's similar to a central bank, but it doesn't function in the same way. They are more focusing on creating the platform to use the digital currency. Yeah.
So now I'm gonna play devil's advocate for now. As you know, just for everyone to know, I will be playing devil's advocate throughout the reviewing of your papers. That way we can start the thought process right along the way. So now, if I'm Brunei Darussalam, or in this case Singapore, why would I want to commit to an AMU if the economic disparity is so wide?
That's a good question.
So, Bonkong, do you have an answer to this question? Let's say I'm the delegation of the Republic of Singapore, and I raise my placard on this recommendation. We acknowledge the delegation of Brunei's proposal, but we do not understand as to why we should focus on immediate economic integration through an establishment of a regional currency when there is so much economic disparity. clearly Singapore and Brunei are richer than most countries in the region. So why should we commit to the dilution of the value of our money by having this AMU? So would one of you want to respond to that question, or is it something you guys want to think about? Because this is the kind of things that I want you guys to think about, because believe it or not, people will question it 100%. Because remember, AMU, this is basically copying the European model. You want to basically establish a Eurozone for currency. AMU, whatever you call it, ASEAN Monetary Unit, is basically meaning the ASEAN Euro. So these are things you want to consider, which brings me to the fifth one, which I think is even more, I wouldn't say commanding, but very clear cut, and it might rub off incorrectly in some nations. He said Brunei Darussalam encourages all ASEAN member states to end the process of digitizing the economy and be ready to use ASEAN digital currency widely by 2030. Now, what would be a problem with this? Okay, now let me play another country. Let's say the Philippines. We find it rather alarming that Brunei Darussalam would make a recommendation to achieve full digitization in 10 years' time, when the countries of the Philippines, and we are sure other countries as well, have had issues with digitizing its economies. Why should we be bound by such a timeline? 10 years. We understand that Brunei Darussalam has taken massive strides in modernizing its economy, but we believe it is not in the best interest of ASEAN to put a deadline on our nations, a deadline that some nations might not even meet in 10 years' time, by 2030. Therefore, we believe we should. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Please. So I wanted you guys to just think about these things, because they will ask it. I would ask it if I'm the delegate of another country.
Well, first of all, this isn't like an exact deadline. Brunei Darussalam just proposed, just want to encourage. It is an option. Encourages, it's your option. But we need to have a timeline of some sort, a deadline of some sort, just to make sure that we are trying our best to digitizing the economy. Without a deadline, I don't think any nation would try to accomplish the goal, and we just keep talking about it. But when we have some sort of deadline, then we know what the plan, we know what the structure, the layout going to look like. And this is not a requirement for every nation to establish digitizing the economy by 2030. It's just an encouragement for them to have it widely by 2030. And obviously Brunei understand that many countries are not ready to digitizing the economy and facing many challenges as well. But this is just an encouragement to have a deadline, to have something to notify, to remind that there isn't always 100 years to digitizing the economy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. So you've managed to provide a response, which is good. But as you would know, as the other delegate, the Philippine delegate, I would continue to press on this issue. And if it were me, I would push to remove this from the resolution. Despite your reasons, I feel like the Philippines still doesn't agree with that notion. We believe that we should not be discussing this as of this moment. Further study needs to be conducted to ensure that we're really ready by 2030. 10 years' time is not acceptable. It is a generalization of every country in Southeast Asia's capabilities of being able to transition, and therefore we should not have it. Now, you can easily find that counter argument in any country. So I'm not saying that it's a bad suggestion. I'm just saying be prepared. Be prepared to defend it.
Right.
Okay.
So
Good.
that we can ask for an amendment from Philippines if they're still pressing on the issues.
Yes. Or if it never reaches consensus, it'll be omitted. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I'm just giving you some tips on how to deal with these problems, because judging from the text alone, I can already feel a lot of countries will ask about it, because the ASEAN monetary unit is a fairly controversial discussion, because not everyone's open to that idea. As you can tell, some countries have better currencies than others in terms of their performance. The ringgit, the Singapore dollar, the Bruneian dollar, they're typically high performers. And the last thing they would want is to be bound by the currencies of like Indonesia, for example, which is one of the well, if you look at value wise, it's one of the lowest valued currencies at what, 60,000 rupiah, something like that, per dollar to the dollar. So Philippines, 50 peso to the dollar, things like that. Cambodia, 4,100 real to the dollar. So these are some things you should definitely think of when you prepare the final draft, provided that you have this considered. Now, if you want to continue with this proposal, that's fine by me. Just be ready to defend it. And who knows, that may be your ticket to best delegate along the way by being active.
Actively debating on things.
Yes, because I want you to debate. This is good. I hope Reksa, Sovan Rich, you're taking note. These kinds of recommendations as made by the finance, this is the kind of questions, although very controversial, and like I mentioned, the South China Sea one, very controversial. But if you can debate it, and then they're watching, and you debate passionately, argue, for hours, that will show, that will be good point, that will be bonus points for your team as a whole. So take that into mind. But yeah, I like what I'm saying. But like I said, I think you should find a way to shorten this, because as I've said already, we need to have only 2 pages at least of position paper. 2 pages. We need to find a way to shorten it, condense it, make it clear, short and concise, to the point. So far, the education group has successfully done that. Their paper is 2 pages, but they might need to add some more recommendations along the way. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much my feedback. Your proposed solutions, I think 4 is a good number of recommendations. If you want to keep 5, okay. Try to find a way to shorten the proposal. That way it's not, it doesn't reach the 3rd page. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for my recommendations and my feedback, unless you guys have any questions for me. If not yet, you can reserve them when I finish giving feedback to everyone. So, but since we have a bit of time, 4 minutes, do you have any questions, Bonkong and Serevuta, based on the feedback you've been given so far?
I'd say no, I don't have any, but I will have to look at the suggestion again, and if I see that there are something need to be clarified, I will chat immediately
All
to
right.
the group. Yeah.
Perfect. Or you can just comment here directly, because
Sure.
I'm reading
yes.
reading these things anyway.
Mhm.
Bonkong, any questions so far you would like to ask?
No. Thank you for your comments, and I will look
Okay.
at with her.
Okay. So since Putirit's where's Monirot? She's not here anyway. So I'm gonna give 3 minutes before 8 o'clock. So do you guys have any questions? Feel free to ask, whether it be Rigoberto, Reksa, ask away. Savan Rich, if you have any questions, let me know. Just speak through the mic. It's fine. I'll allocate 3 minutes before we wait for Monirot. So maybe Putirit, you can call Monirot to join so we can begin the review at 8 o'clock. Okay, so any questions so far that you guys would like to ask? Anything? No questions? Defense ministers, defense officials?
Wait, I'm on a call with someone and we're discussing.
Oh, okay. Fine, that's fine. Any questions, Sultan?
Yes, because
Okay, what's your question?
so because like you said about the MAU, Asian Monetary Unit. So
Yes,
like because in ASEAN is different like from the European Union because European Union they have the euro like the same currency. So
correct.
in
The
this
easy.
case, so in this case in ASEAN, like is it possible to like implement AMU like Asian Monetary Unit like all the I mean all the countries in Asia use the same currency.
So your question is it possible?
Yes, because recently, like they mentioned about MAU, so they will also debate it. Like, they will also propose it in during the meeting, right? So this is what I want to know about the MAU.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to answer, Mhm. Yeah, I understand I get the question. The thing is, like I said, it's a very controversial recommendation. The AMU in general, a regional currency is not, I would assume, is not welcomed by everyone. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but definitely it's not. There's no. I'm not sure if there's consensus on that yet. Typically, the divide stems from richer countries not wanting to be integrated with the less wealthier countries because it might devalue or dilute the value of their, their currency. In this case, SGD, Singapore dollar, is what, two Singapore dollar, one something, 1 point something Singapore dollar to the US. So it's very but yes, you see, like Putrit mentioned, Brunei and Singapore are best friends typically. But if we talk about AMU, we might lose an ally. So that's another thing you have to consider. Are you willing to lose an ally in the process by recommending something that your typical ally in ASEAN would not support, right? That's the thing about diplomacy. We want to make recommendations, yes, but we need to balance it. We need to know which countries may be affected. Are they our allies? If that's the case, then we have to be very careful. Because remember, this is not just about the finance thing. We also have to make concessions in the defense and the education. What happens if they do a tit for tat? Now, tit for tat in diplomacy means they'll do something back to us. Maybe we wanted to recommend something for education and Singapore blocks it because that's like, in a way, that's a retaliation for our raising of the AMU, to which they have typically or maybe historically opposed. So that's something to consider. As finance ministers, we have to seek a win-win solution. So yes, we want to recommend our agendas, but we also have to see the situation. Will it benefit us or will it only do more damage? That's something you guys should think of. The same applies to RESA and the defense officials. So, okay, hold your questions for now. I'm going to move to ASCD, Putirit's group. I'm going to talk about, well, first of all, how are you today, Putirit and Chan Monirot?
Hello.
Well, how are you?
uh, Today pretty good. Have a good dinner.
Very good. Great. And I hope you're ready for my questions.
Okay, sure. This will be fun.
Anyways, so we're gonna go through your paper. As I've noticed, so okay, you started pretty standard. You talked about ASEAN, the situation of education and the Southeast Asian studies in general. I've made some changes word wise. Feel free to review them. Um, because we want to make sure that when we deliver our message, it is clear, concise, and to the point. Golden rule, and to follow. Country stance, okay, consistent. So we definitely want to promote Southeast Asian studies. You've made that very clear. Digital technology, to be better prepared for the eventual integration. So this is kind of like the finance thing. We're moving digital. So we're encouraging countries to take a digital leap. In this case, take a leap towards digitalization. And of course, not everyone's going to be ready. Okay. Yeah, so while we're talking, Bonkong, please discuss with Sarayvuta moving forward. Remember, suggestions is one, alliances is another. You have to always take these things into consideration. You don't have to make a recommendation if you might end up losing a partner in ASEAN during the meeting. So just be aware of that. Okay, always take alliances into consideration. That's how diplomats always have to weigh these things. Anyway, country stance, goal to become a nation widely recognized for its well-educated, highly skilled people, a workforce, typically I think I would say workforce, attuned to global knowledge-based economy. In 2012, okay, this is my question from Paputirit Monirot. You guys cited a 2012 source that
Yeah.
we increased our budget to 16.9%. Do we have any data that is more recent, like 2019, 2020?
Yeah, I was concerned about that point too. I was about to ask you, like I highlight that year too. I was about to ask you, is that too old or is it acceptable?
Well, typically, I mean, it's a position paper of the country, so they can't really say, oh, it's a bad year. You cited such an old source. They can never tell us that. But of course, we want to
Bad news,
show that, yeah,
bad.
we want to show that we're up to date, right? So maybe they'll ask, oh, you improve. The last time you allocated that 16.9% of your budget was like what, 10 years ago or something like that, 9 or 8 years ago. Long
Yeah,
time.
I found
So sorry.
yeah, I found another site that is more current, like in this year in 2020 or 2021, but it's not like this number like 16.9% of annual budget. They put it literally in like Brunei dollar.
Bruneian dollar.
Yeah, should
What was the? Can you send me the link so I can check it also?
yeah. I will check the Telegram. Just a minute.
But anyways, continuing on, you guys put an in-text citation. Typically, you don't need because you already have footnote. You can just put it. You can put the page number in the footnote. But yeah, in-text citation is not required. Okay, highest literacy as well as one of the highest literacy rates. Put that. Okay. So, okay. Moreover, the government has provided free public education to its citizens for a period of 12 years. Just for added information, I would suggest you make sure that has there been any steps to improve to continue this program of providing free public education. That's just something for a general knowledge. So it's always good to stay up to date with that because, of course, you represent Brunei, so you're expected to be aware of these informations. So, okay, although much has been done, the shift towards the education system of the 21st century is still in its first steps. I forgot to edit that. I'll work on that later. But yeah, Brunei, typically you'd say Brunei Darussalam. That would be the recommended term. Hopes to achieve in 2025. Brunei sees that the new emerging alternative e-learning is a potential platform that can yield fruitful results in promoting Southeast Asian studies. Okay, straightforward. Okay, propose solutions. In order to succeed for this, Brunei Darussalam would like to propose a number of solutions. Okay, Brunei Darussalam calls for all member states to join in conducting and agreeing on a concrete work plan for ASEAN to effectively promote Southeast Asian studies through e-learning and suggest an annual SOMED meeting to update on the progress. So here's my question with this. Why would we suggest an annual meeting when we already have annual meetings that
Uh,
involve senior officials of the education? We actually do that yearly. So why should we suggest it again? That's my question.
okay. Actually, for this point, the point that I want to say is that before we have done what we have done to promote the Southeast Asian study is through the Asian University Network and the
Mm-hmm.
previous CMO's initiative. But with this e-learning, so do we want to switch the way we want to promote Southeast Asian study to completely online, or we just adding on the previous initiative that we have done?
Mm-hmm. And
That's why I suggest this recommendation to define the what we want to do with the online learning. Like
okay, well, okay. uh, that's don't be nervous. It's fine. I'm not. This is normal. I'm playing devil's advocate because it's for the benefit of
yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
That that I prepare you for these types of situations, because do not go to the meeting expecting that everything you recommend will be accepted.
yeah.
There are countries that will question you, and I'm playing that role of a country questioning your recommendations, which is normal. It's perfectly normal. So yeah, that's just my question. If I was another country, I'd be curious as to why you want another SOMED meeting when it's already understood that we hold SOMED meetings annually. Every summit, every ASEAN meeting involves these SOMED meetings. So I don't know why we should emphasize the need to do that every year when we are already doing it every year. Isn't it like stating, the term stating the obvious?
Uh, yeah,
Right. Stating the obvious meaning, why are you saying something that's already known to everyone? That's the kind of. So it may appear as a, I wouldn't say capricious recommendation, but it would appear as something that would have no relevance because it's already understood to be a yearly thing. So I would suggest you to craft it differently, to craft the proposal differently. I understand you want to talk about e-learning, but how, right? Because if you're just going to say we should do more SOMED meetings, it's already given, we're doing it. So there's a greater chance that they will not include this recommendation in the resolution. Because remember, there are 10 countries with variety of resolutions. They're not going to put all our resolutions. They're going to pick. So for ministers, it's important to make sure that your proposal stands out so that it can appear during the draft resolution for everyone to debate on. Because when I made some recommendations, I think I only had 2 recommendations or 3 that were discussed in uh, the actual meeting, when I had like 5 recommendations or 4, right? So 2, at least 2 is good. So we need to find ways to make sure our recommendations stand out. So just be aware of that. Proposal number 1. Number 2, proposal Brunei Darussalam recommends all member states to take advantage of e-learning to inclusively target youth to raise their awareness of ASEAN by providing online engaging events with a different theme relating to ASEAN on a monthly basis, and by organizing annual virtual ASEAN youth conferences with participation from representative youths of all member states to gather for cultural and perspective exchanges. Or, yeah, okay. Potential exchanges, student exchanges, something like that. That's fine. That's good. That's a fairly, what you would consider a general recommendation, typically accepted in a chairman's statement, normal. Third one is to achieve the goal of a people-centered ASEAN region of one community, one identity, one vision. Brunei Darussalam calls on adopting credential. You mean credible and
yeah.
transparent?
I
Okay,
see your point.
credible.
And
Yeah.
just when sorry, the topic.
Yeah, credible and transparent digital content pertaining to Southeast Asian studies, and cross-checking with member states to ensure unity and sovereignty of all members. The very main principle of ASEAN: non-interference, mutual respect for sovereignty. Very good recommendation here, but we're just gonna have to reword it to make it sound, appealing, but it's okay. But yeah, you made 3 recommendations. As you know, there's no guarantee all will make it. So my recommendation is at least have 4 uh, 4 suggestions. usually that's the good number, because at least you have a 50% chance of 2 of your recommendations being in the actual draft paper, draft resolution. So have that in mind when you're writing these things. All right, the ending statement: Brunei Darussalam Sultan, the Sultan of Brunei Darussalam. I'm going to change that, switch that. Brunei Darussalam Sultan. The Sultan of Brunei Darussalam, Hassan al-Bolkiah, once said, over the past 30 years, ASEAN has made great strides in regional cooperation, covering, who did we lose? Let me see. Saributa. It was Saributa, disappeared. Anyway, therefore, it is important for ASEAN member states to continue to pursue understanding and unity and emphasize cooperation in the education sector in the region. The delegation of Brunei Darussalam, as chair to this year's 12 ASEAN meeting, strongly advocates and sponsors any ideas, proposals, aimed at targeting e-learning as an effective medium to promote Southeast Asian studies. Okay, that's a fairly straightforward conclusion. Clearly states what Brunei wants to achieve, and that's very important. But yes, so out of all this paper, I think an area of focus for Monirot and Putiriat is the proposed solutions, right? This is, I've noticed you guys are playing safe. Playing safe in this case, you don't want to steer the boat, rock the boat, and you're just making recommendations that are typically general in nature. That's perfectly fine, but the chances of it being in the draft paper might lessen. That's why you need to come up with another, some ideas that would really get people talking, start talking about it. Because typically, let's say the second recommendation, we can easily talk about this in 2 minutes and then move on to the next one. It's not going to engage that much debate because it's pretty general. Everyone would mostly agree. So that's something I want you guys to take in mind. As you've seen from the AFMM and the ADMM papers, fairly controversial, lot of recommendations. So yeah, that's pretty much for me. That's it for me. I have nothing much to say really. Pretty straightforward, everything's good. But yeah, the proposed solutions, we got to work on that. Everything's pretty clear, no offensive language in this case, no triggering languages. Country stance clear, background's okay. Yeah, we're just gonna have to word it a little bit better. But yeah, do you have any questions for me? Since it was a fairly quick assessment, feedback. So do you guys have any questions? Putirit, Monirot, no questions?
Yeah.
So, Mentor, you want the solution to be a little bit controversial so that it could be talked more like that?
Well, no, I wouldn't say controversial. It's just maybe, when I mean controversial, like the ASEAN Monetary Unit, that is controversial. Try to go for solutions that would really like maybe, where's my paper, for instance? I don't have my paper right now, Philippine paper. But yeah, you want to stand out from the crowd. You know what I mean? When you make solutions, it's not, you don't want to anger the crowd. You just want to make a suggestion that would actually engage some discussion, right? So maybe you want us to invest or put primary focus on Southeast Asian studies. Therefore, we must invest in digital technology, things like that. Like for instance, so invest, that's another term, or anything that involves spending money, countries will ask about it. Typically. Yeah, something like that.
But I think I want to do something safe because on the event day, we're not sure that Poterat will be coming, and then if it is something like hard to defend, it will be.
Well, it's normal, but my number one tip is the best way to learn is by being bold in the sense that you are daring. Because remember, no one can offend you. You're a sovereign country. And if you don't agree, we don't go anywhere. So literally, that's just how it is. But yeah, feel free to talk about it. You know, you guys have till the 14th of February to submit your final drafts. So you guys have
Okay.
plenty of time. But yeah, I understand it can get a bit scary, but remember, you're gonna have to argue and debate them on their recommendations, because I'm sure Brunei may have something to say about their recommendation. So we have to be prepared there, and we have to be prepared for them. That's
Yeah.
one thing. So
I
yeah,
have one.
yeah, Patrick, what's your question?
Do we want to completely promote the Southeast Asian study online?
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like,
That's what I mean. What does Brunei? What is the official stance of Brunei on that?
I mean, for the future of ASEAN, do they want to do that completely online or like this is?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, number one, the first question you should ask is, what does Brunei want? I mean, we're representing Brunei, so what does
Oh,
Brunei desire, and what does it say in their official policy statement, in the actual documents of? I'm sure you guys read about it. So, what's their official
yeah.
statements and position? Do they want to digitalize e-learn? Do they want to digitalize Southeast Asian studies, or do they want to only use it as a stopgap measure? Now, stopgap meaning temporary measure until we can return to our normal lives. What is it exactly that Brunei
Um,
wants?
I think Brunei want the digitalization.
Okay, so if that
But
is the case, mm,
so firstly, it is cost effective,
mm-hmm,
and our country already has the infrastructure for doing that online, and we have the English language skills amongst our among our students. So we are in a position that if we promoting that online, we get more benefit.
okay, so that's actually a good proposed solution, because as a playing devil's advocate, as another country, let's say from Laos, I might have something to say regarding that. In this case, what if I say we're not ready to digitalize, right?
Yeah.
How are you gonna solve? How are you gonna debate? How are you gonna counter that? Let's say Lao would say, "I'm not ready. What to do now? Not ready. I'm not ready to digitalize. We still believe that the best form of education is in person.
In
Nothing
person.
beats it. Nothing. That's the kind of things you have to anticipate, because some countries, like case in point, the Philippines, their official policy is they still believe that online classes would never replace in-person learning, face to face.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually an official policy of the Philippines. They want students in general dislike the idea of online classes. It's counterproductive. It doesn't help them learn, etc. Even the education department thinks it the same. So, what's stopping Philippines from saying, why should we focus too much on digitalization? It should only be a temporary measure and not a long-term solution, for it can never compete with face-to-face learning, right? Things like that. So keep that in mind. I'm sure you're a bit. I'm sure you're trying to wrap your, trying to process this. But that's how I would rebut if I were the Philippines.
Okay.
So be aware that I can question a lot of your policies, and because some countries, believe it or not, do not agree with digitalization, like online learning for some countries is a hindrance to the development of the youth, in that they believe that teachers teaching in classrooms in schools cannot be replaced. No way. And the same with Southeast Asian studies. It's an immersion process. How can you immerse the students in the cultural beauties of Southeast Asia through a digital platform?
Mm. I
What's
think that
these?
because of that is why I wrote the first like the number one here, to for them to conduct a work plan for ASEAN, like to define what they want to do with the online learning, what program or what are the like initiative they would like to suggest. For us currently now, like in ASEAN, we have the Asian University Network that that play a vital role in promoting Southeast Asian study by offering scholarship for Asian students to study, say like Singapore Asian scholarship. Is that true?
No, I'm not asking you to defend to rebut me now. I'm just saying that it can be asked, and you should be ready. And like you mentioned,
Yeah.
can Brunei call for the adoption of ICT? Of course it can. It can recommend it. Whether or not everyone agrees depends on the meeting, right? So that's something to be aware. As you know, there's plenty of time for you guys to talk, discuss how to move forward with the papers. For the benefit of everyone, I will be ready to meet you again in the day of submission, 14th February. That's usually by the midnight, the submission. So I can ready to once again review your papers on that day to make sure you are ready. But yeah, take this time to figure it out, and you should be good. And you can tell that if we do the simulation regarding the resolution, that's why I decided to watch, and everyone will chair. In this case, who's chairing again? Rigoberto's chairing or Monirot for the simulation practice? Or are you guys still doing that? Just to make sure. If you guys are not doing that, well, initially, if we were going to do it, I was just going to watch, because as expected, I will come firing on all cylinders, arguing, debating everything that goes through, every word, basically, be ready to argue. But yeah, these are just some things you have to be prepared for. The purpose of today's meeting is to walk you through your papers, right? Walk through what you have written, and also start getting it, start letting you process the potential scenarios that would happen once this is already in this debating up for discussion. So yeah. Do you have any other questions, Putirit, so far, Monirot, that you want to ask? Because we have about 3.5 minutes to go till I talk to Rigoberto, head of state, for this paper. So if you have any questions, just type it down, or you can speak. It's fine. No pressure. No pressure. Don't be pressured. Remember, my as a mentor, my job is to prepare you. So do not be afraid or do not be intimidated by my line of questioning. It's perfectly normal. I'm doing it, so I'm doing it now. So come the actual meeting, you will not be intimidated by any other, because you went through me in this case.
Yeah. I see the point.
We need to prepare, because remember, delegates, when it's the actual time, every delegate for themselves, every country for themselves in this case. So believe me, I've had arguments with Indonesia, Vietnam, so many times during my time as AEC as finance minister. Argued policy, law, word. Can you believe should and shall was a main argument? We argued for 30 minutes on the word should and shall. 30 minutes on that. And yeah, it can happen. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, 2 minutes left. But I will be asking everyone questions once I'm finished with Rigoberto. So if you have no questions, feel free to... Okay, you have a question? None? No?
Not now.
Not now. Okay. So, okay, since you have no more questions, I'm going to move on to Rigoberto. I'm going to talk about his head of state opening statement. Rigoberto, you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for staying on. You've been here since 7 o'clock. So thank you for staying on, and to everyone also. Shall is equal to must. Shall, must, should. Ah, Putrit makes a fine point. That's the thing. Words is very important. It can make or break anything. Should and shall. Shall is authoritative. Should is like recommendation. So you have to be very careful of the words you use, because many countries will ask about it. If I were one of the delegates and you wrote this paper and you said should, shall, I will question it. Surely, 100%. But anyways, that's just it's always good to practice and be aware of that. This is the diplomatic lingo, right? And diplomacy, word for word, we check word for word. Like law, we check word for word. It's the same thing with international relations. Because remember, your countries are signing these things, and the last thing you want is to be bound, legally bound by a document that compels you to do something, and you fail to realize that because you didn't look at the words. That's something to take into consideration when we're writing. But anyways, I would like to move to Rigoberto's opening address statement, whichever we call it. So as you know, Rigoberto, it looks slightly different. I have revised your paper, retaining the original language, um, original intention, things that you wanted to highlight. Um, so there are some things that I've noticed. This is a total, when you wrote your paper, it was like 400 words. Is that correct? Isn't it not?
I already forgot it.
I think it was 430 words. Let's just assume that. 430
Okay.
words. Almost 2 pages. How long do you think it takes for someone to speak to, how many words can a person speak in 2 minutes, do you think?
Uh, I think
Typically,
it depends
what's
on how.
how
I think it
fast?
depends on, yeah, how fast we deliver the speech. Like if
Mhm,
we do it like slowly, I think we need like very short. I mean, like short.
mhm.
Like uh, it really depends on how we deliver the speech. Like if we do it fast, then I think it's okay. But if you want to do it like smoothly and slowly, I think we need to make it shorter.
Mhm. As a delegate, in your opinion, which one is the best method? To say as much as you can in 2 minutes, or to deliver a message clearly in 2 minutes? Which one do
Yes,
you think is the best method, in your opinion?
I think like the best method is to use the one that it is short and concise, like so that
Mm-hmm.
the audience can catch like the what we're trying to convey, the message, like the message that we're trying to convey,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and also yes, I think it's better to make it shorter, like to make it short and then just highlight some of the important points
Mm-hmm.
like that I want to convey to the
Okay.
audiences. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So I'm sure everybody heard that, because the reason I'm saying this is because it's very important to know your audience. In the case of Rigoberto, his audience is, well, although the ministers will be present, that's not his target audience. His target audience is the head of states, the head of state. Now, typically, the head of state doesn't really care about technical terms. That's why they have their ministers to deal with those stuff. So, as a head of state, you're kind of like the MC, master of ceremony. You're welcoming everyone in your country, greeting them, congratulating the previous chair, recognizing the good work that ASEAN has done, recognizing Brunei's work, but you don't have to define it so specifically. Like for instance, I noticed that you provided a lot of detail for each topic, but I think, in my opinion, that's the responsibility of the ministers and the senior officials, because they're going to be the ones in the meeting. They're the ones who should clarify it, and it should reflect on the position paper. But if you're head of state, your goal is to highlight ASEAN, achievements of Brunei. Not, it doesn't have to be like 5 sentences or things like that. Shorter usually, just highlighting our achievements in the security realm, the education, and financial realm. So yeah, we've mentioned Wawasan, Brunei 2035. Um, Now, I'm not sure how you will do it, Rigoberto, but I think I would suggest you to shorten it, but retain the original meaning. I would suggest retain it. That way, when you talk during the actual speech, when you deliver it in a few weeks' time, it's going to sound normal, doesn't sound rushed. It shows composure on the part of the delegation, that you know exactly what you're talking about, and you clearly state the goals of ASEAN's chairmanship under Brunei. I think that's something you should take into consideration. Um, but yeah, so far so good, Rigoberto.
Yeah, yeah. I think so far so good because I see I mean, the opening remarks that you already revised, that you already gave feedback. I think this one is already like, I mean, like all the words here, like, I mean, like that's how, like how we do the diplomacy. So it's very formal. So that's very
Yes.
good. I'm very happy
So
for that. Yeah. So,
thank you. I'm
yeah, yeah.
kind of it's
Thank you
kind
for
of my
that.
hobby to write speeches, actually. I guess I was a speech writer in my previous life. I don't know. But
Wow.
yes, as you know, I want to. You're the head of state. You're going to deliver the most important speech, quite literally. You're the master of ceremonies. You're welcoming into your country. So I looked at your speech, and I tried my best to make sure it carries the weight of your intentions. In this case, what you wanted to say. I made sure to deliver it in a very diplomatic setting. Putting the diplomatic touches to it. So um, hopefully you like the revision, but I think we need to shorten it, because 500 words I don't think will be done in 2 minutes. I think it will take longer. Unless you speak really fast, then it'll be done. But we definitely need to shorten it, at least maybe at least 1.5 pages, probably something around there. But yeah, I'm gonna give you the full liberty of making the changes until the February 14. So no pressure on your end. But yeah, I think it's good overall. I can't give much feedback because you've covered the key points of what the head of state should deliver, right? So I removed peace upon you all because they don't want us to use the word you in the rules, right? So we have to stick with neutral terms like they, the delegation, the nation, the Socialist Republic. So we have to remove those stuff. So I basically gave you the feedback here already. Due to time constraints, there might be issues. Same comment. I think you can easily combine all this into a shorter sentence, I think, provided that you uh, make it shorter and concise, right? Um, but yeah, I think nothing's wrong so far. I think we'll definitely just need to shorten your speech because we need to remember 2 minutes is our target. So hopefully that can be done. Unless you have any questions, Rigoberto, please feel free to ask me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, like because at the last training session, like Professor, I forgot his name. Like he also mentioned about like in the public speaking, we can include
Yes, Professor Graham.
yes, Professor Graham. So
Steven, yeah.
yeah, Professor Steven, this one. So he explained that in the public speaking, like we can use like metaphor or like some famous quotes to
Mhm.
in order to hook their audience, like to hook the audience to catch their attentions. So how do you think about that? Like, should I include like some quotes like from the Lao Tzu, the
Yeah.
yeah? What do you think,
Yeah.
what do you think about it?
That was my favorite quote, actually, the Lao Tzu one. But yes, the thing is, you're the head of state, so you're not you're not bound by the strict formalities. Apart from being diplomatic, you're not bound by the strict, short and concise and to the point language required for position papers. So in your case, you can use rhetoric, and I encourage you to use all six rhetorics. So typically, you have the breathless, you have the rhyming words, the balance, what's the other one? Metaphor,
Competitors
repetition, right, repetition,
and breathless.
balance, right, and breathless.
Exaggeration.
Yeah. So take these into consideration. Oops.
Should write it
Okay,
down.
I thought I lost you guys for a moment. Anyway, yeah. So those are the things that you can always add. You can quote. You know, I don't know who you want to quote, but feel free to quote someone. It's always good. I mean, I think I understand that, like in the case of Rasa, she's using a lot of rhetoric in her position in the position paper. You can always use that for your opening address. I highly recommend you to consider it for your opening statement as the chair to your meeting, because in the position paper it's all serious business. Serious business, no beating around the bush, straight to the point. What Brunei's position is, this is our recommendations. But when you do the opening address, you can always use all the rhetoric that you can. So hopefully you can have that in mind. So yeah, breathless, balanced, metaphor, rhyme. Yes. So things like that. So breathless. So I'm gonna read the speech and I'm gonna try and use all the things that Reza just typed. I'm not sure. Okay. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, how would I use exaggeration? It is extremely, that's exaggeration, because it is a great honor. That's also, in a way, an exaggeration, but if you really want to be exaggerated, it is an extremely great honor for Brunei Darussalam to welcome all member states to this year's 38th ASEAN Summit and related meetings. Brunei would first like to recognize and congratulate the Socialist Republic of Vietnam for successfully hosting last year's ASEAN Summit and related meetings at a very difficult period in the midst of the Goliath task of addressing COVID-19, which has ravaged the face of the earth as a result of this unknown and virus. Okay, something like that. So you can always sound exaggerated if you want, right? So through the efforts of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, last year's meetings, ASEAN's common targets and issues were addressed, and the results have been fruitful. Wait, someone was about to ask a question? No question? Okay, I thought someone was about to speak. Okay, but yeah, anyways, so the point I'm trying to make is the rhetoric in public speaking is very important. You can use that in debates, highly encouraged. I'm not sure, Ratsa, if you're studying with Steve
I
this
already took it
semester.
last semester.
Okay, what course did you take with him?
Oral communication.
Oral com?
Yeah.
Did you do debate?
Yeah. We like did
Mm.
2 per
How-
week.
What?
We did
Yes.
2 per week
Yes.
of the COVID thing.
Very good. Very good. So you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about already. That's
Yeah.
good. And that's why use it. Use it in the debate. You got to use it. It's very helpful. Now, I used it when I did my debates in oral com, one of the best classes I've had. I did the debating a lot there every week. Very controversial topics too. Arranged marriages. Sure, I think you talked about that
No,
also.
we don't have that one.
Oh,
We talked
no.
abortion. And what prostitution?
Abortion.
prostitution,
Prostitution,
yeah,
abortion,
and
uh,
I think what was that one again? About the
corruption.
university admission.
Ah, okay.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, I must say you guys had it a bit lighter than our topics, to be honest. Our topics last time were animal testing,
Oh,
arranged marriages,
we had that too, animal testing.
yeah, arranged marriage, prostitution, corruption. Is corruption a social thing and should it be treated as such? Very difficult topic. Because how can you even justify corruption in the first place, right? So that's one of
Oh,
the many things, and that's what.
I remember
Huh?
it. Affirmative action.
Hmm?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action. That is if you're against corruption. What if you have to defend it?
I think I defended it. I was on the pro
You
side.
defended it?
Yeah, I defended it.
Yeah. In my case, I had to justify corruption, but I found a loophole, which I won't discuss today because, as you know, we're focused on our feedback. But yeah, it was a fun experience. But yeah, so Ryatsa knows what I mean by the rhetoric. I'm sure some of you haven't used it as much yet. So I highly encourage you to take note of Professor Stephen Graham's tips on rhetoric. Very helpful in debates. You can always use it. Because, you know, although you may not realize when you use rhetoric, for some reason, the person you're talking to is, I don't know, but why does he sound right? Huh? Yeah. Why does he sound right? Is it because of what he's saying or because of his delivery? His delivery. That's the thing. We just learned rhetoric today. Yes, actually, we must have a lesson on rhetoric. That's a fantastic idea. You know, I should have thought of that. That's like a 1 in a million idea. You see, I'm using rhetoric already. It's 1 in a million. Now, although we have to focus on our assignment today, we can always allocate some time. Now, I'm sure if some of you've noticed, that was a balance. That was a balanced example. You always weigh the things. But anyways, we should learn rhetoric. I agree with you. It's a very important tool. As a matter of fact, I used it a lot when I debated my colleagues from Indonesia and Vietnam during the ASEAN meeting and UN as well. So yeah, we need to learn that. And lucky for you, Suvan Rich, you're teamed up with Ryatsa. So she already knows what I'm talking about. And you can learn the ways for your overall benefit and for the other members too. But anyway, Rigoberto, do you have any questions for the meantime?
Yes. Like
Mm-hmm.
here you the paper. I mean as you already revised the opening remarks. Like for example, in some part you say that should be omitted. Like the one I mentioned, recognition for the ASEAN Secretary General. So this one I don't have to mention, right? Just omit it.
I
Make it
think
shorter.
I mean we could. It's completely optional. The thing is you should prioritize what is the most important thing to raise. Do you think mentioning the Secretary General is more important than highlighting Brunei's achievements? It's something you'll have to make to decide. But if you think the key achievements of Brunei is more important and that you can live with not mentioning the Brunei Secretary General, that's fine. That's completely up to you. This is the thing. I'm here to give you advice, and it's up to you to follow it or not. So remember, I don't grade these things. I'm not. I'm just I'm just an advisor. So yeah. You can decide how to move forwards. The paper is already there, general. So
Yep.
okay.
So yeah. So for the last comment, like when I mentioned about the like Brunei's stance, like should I mean like just mention about the achievement or just should I like mention about the achievement of Brunei Darussalam in regards to to the issues that we will discuss, or just the like give the Brunei standpoint, like Brunei stands in regards to the issues that will be discussed?
Yeah, I think it's always good to have both of it. As long as you try to you say it in a concise manner. You don't have to, like, for instance, oh, we have taken strides in achieving the financial situation, the digital currency situation in Brunei Darussalam by introducing fintech. We also fintech, so something like that. You don't have to explain what fintech is, because that's, I mean, it would be helpful, but since you only have 2 minutes, you have to prioritize the information, right? Highlight this, highlight this, highlight that. After all, it's an opening speech, opening address. So um, that should be where the focus is at. Of
Yeah.
course, you can conclude it with an extending of arms. And with that being said, Brunei Darussalam, under the motto of "We care, we prepare, we prosper," formally declares the 38th ASEAN Summit and related meetings open. Thank you and selamat pagi. So that's a pretty good conclusion that closes off. So it's up to you how you want to edit this part all the way to the top. And remember, you're the one going to deliver the speech, so try to practice it. See if you can deliver it concisely and clearly in 2 minutes. If you think that you can do it, then yeah, make the changes to make sure that that it reflects that.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not sure if Rigoberto has any further questions, but yeah, as
Yes.
mentioned by Reza, Rumi, the Muslim poet, maybe you can quote Rumi as well.
All right.
As you start to walk on the way appears. Yeah, Rumi. So that's a very Rumi statement. Very good. Anyways, I agree. So yeah, that's actually a good quote. You can use that. Or Ratsa can use that. It's up to her. If she wants to use it for her speech, it's fine. But yeah, do you have any questions, Rigoberto? I was speaking earlier, or nothing already?
I think everything is clear now. So I just summarize some points and then make it shorter, and
Yep.
then add some maybe add some quotes or some metaphor, and then
Yes.
yeah, I think that's all finished.
Because the most important thing, by the way, in the case of Rigoberto, is I want you to make sure that you're comfortable speaking. Do not read, do not treat the speech as someone just telling you to say something. I want it from the heart. So if you don't like how this speech is written, it is completely within your right to write it in your image, in this case, because the most important thing when you write these speeches is you're supposed to reflect your character and how you want to carry yourself, not how the mentor wants to carry you. It's one tip that I can always say. So yeah, if you're comfortable with this draft speech, feel free to practice it. But if you want to make some changes, always do so. Remember, your comfort is priority because you're the one going to read it in front of all the other heads of state during the actual meeting. So the last thing we want is someone not being able to deliver it clearly because they feel, they feel like they're being forced to just say what someone else wants them to say. One thing to take into consideration. Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. So are there any other questions from the finance people? Finance people, education. The lamps are different, but the light is the same. Whoever you are, be a good one. Very good. So yeah, any questions from the finance group? Sarevuta and Bonkong. I think Bonkong just left us earlier. So Sarevuta, feel free to type if you can. Um, maybe for the education team. Okay, so while I wait for that response, I'm gonna ask education. Education team, any questions? Feel free to type it out. None so far. I think everyone's clear. Reza, you have a question? We are not finished. Ah, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Where was we? Okay, here we are. Number 1. Okay, Maritime Security Convention. So have you taken the opportunity to talk to Savan Rich?
Yeah, we did talk.
Okay, so what's your assessment, defense ministers, defense officials?
Well, Svanria, you want to talk?
Savan Rich, I'm gonna ask you to talk this time so that Reza can take a break. She's very active, you know.
Yep. So for clause number 1, we just want to keep it the way it is because we want all the member states to sign what already have been made and not to create a new convention.
Okay, very well. That's
Yep.
clear enough. So let's see, we are not finished. Yep, what? Okay. All right, so number 2, Brunei Darussalam recommends the increase in confidence and capacity building exercises amongst littoral states, especially the waters concerned, to foster shared empathy, especially amidst the current geopolitical uncertainties of the South China Sea dispute, which is fracturing ASEAN's focus on the issue of maritime piracy. Okay, you mentioned increased confidence and capacity building exercises. So my question is, I'm going to play devil's advocate again. Let's say I'm going to be Vietnam. So the delegation of Vietnam would like to ask the delegation of Brunei Darussalam to clarify recommendation number or clause number 3, let's just say, or clause number 2, with regards to confidence and capacity building exercises. Can the delegation elaborate on the nature of these capacity building exercises? Will they be entirely civilian in nature, or will there be military elements involved?
This I would refer to like coordinated naval patrols, even though like everyone is having mistrust because of the claims in the South China Sea and all, but like don't, because of that distrust, don't just decrease what we are doing, what we have already been doing, don't decrease it, because if everyone is not like continuing what they have been doing, then the pirates would have an even higher chances of um, affecting everyone.
Okay. Thank you, delegate of Brunei Darussalam. The delegation of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam would like to issue a recommendation to amend clause number 2 to add the terms military and civilian application. Thank you, Madam Chair. So something like that. So that's how I'm going to try and resolve and clarify your clause, because you can't expect everyone to just leave your clause alone. Countries like Vietnam might suggest to clarify the intention of these capacity building exercises. So in the case of Vietnam, we could suggest that capacity building exercises, both military and civilian in nature, among littoral states. I could make that recommendation. And if everyone reaches consensus, then yeah, it's good. Not only did Vietnam help contribute to the passing of your recommendation, we've also strengthened it by sending a clearer, providing a clearer framework and understanding. Because remember, in international law, or in international, in diplomacy in general, countries always want clear statements, clear intent, because the idea in international law is we always read the plain text. Plain text meaning that we always read it at its face value, because we are, countries in this case. So we would usually recommend to improve it and clarify. So what I just did now with regards to the Vietnam example is a scenario wherein Vietnam will listen to your explanation, and when it accepts your explanation, I will suggest an amendment to improve the clause, not omit the clause. There's a difference. So typically, if Brunei think that's a good idea, okay, then it agrees that military and civilian applications should apply. So yeah, that's just something part of the exercise that we're doing here. Okay. Now, number 3. Brunei Darussalam recommends that ASEAN and its maritime-related forums and mechanisms launch initiatives to promote awareness on maritime cyber security risks. Okay, so you've made a number of suggestions here below. Stakeholders should look into providing physical and digital security of critical maritime facilities and operating systems, information and communication technology. For it is important for operating harbors, automatic identification systems, navigation, logistics systems, and vessels. Thus, coordinated cyber attacks by high-tech pirates against infrastructure operators would cause rippling effects on maritime traffic and trade. Now, as being that this is a defense ministers meeting, how would you explain to Lao, let's say Lao, for example, even if they signed the maritime agreement, if they ask, how would you explain the need for them to invest or consider investing on these things when they don't have maritime, then they don't have seas to protect in the first place because of their landlocked situation?
Mantra, I think I put stakeholders.
Stakeholders, okay. But remember, this recommendation involves all of ASEAN. Now, stakeholders can mean many things. I mean, for instance, the Mekong River Initiative between Cambodia, Laos, and what's that? Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand. I think Myanmar also, no. But yeah, the Philippines is also invited to those meetings. And of course, as a delegation, discussing it within an ASEAN level, we want clarification on what it means. So how would you explain it to a country that would typically not have an interest in that sense?
From what I know, Laos also get the economic also depend on the other country that are connected to the sea, which means that if the other country doesn't have a good economic with the sea, it would also affect Laos. So
Beautiful. That's what I'm looking for. So, Rasa, that's the first test. When you're asked the question, do not just refer to the text. Try to analyze it carefully, and because remember, you have to satisfy everyone, right? And we cannot just assume that they understand what you're talking about. So what Sovanrich did just now was he clearly explained the impact and the importance of having these mechanisms. For not only does it protect the trade in Southeast Asia, it also protects Laos because it relies on the goods at sea for its survival. So that's something that that's just part of the scenario building things that we're doing in defense ministers, because I definitely expect this meeting to be very heated. Anything involving defense is very contentious in the first place. So yeah, you're about to ask something, Reza, just now, or? No? Okay. I thought you were about to ask something. Okay, let me see. Port administration should be assisted in capacity building through ASEAN Ports Association to suppress armed robbery against ships and other forms of maritime crime within anchorages and port approaches. Okay, so just out of curiosity, what would be a simpler term for these two words? Because I've noticed this is the second time you've mentioned anchorages. What would be the universal term for these things? Ports? Is it understood to be ports, or is there a distinction between an anchorage and a port based on your research?
I did not specify that part.
Okay, so because you always have to assume that the delegation, other delegates, may not understand what that means, right? They might, and I could be an unknowing delegate. I could be the delegate of Burma, the defense minister of Burma, asking, well, what's the distinction between anchorages and ports? So,
an anchorage is a location at sea where ships can lower anchors, and its purpose is for the ships to wait to dock into ports.
Okay, so that's now interesting, because now's a question of jurisdiction. You said anchorages are, sorry, what was the definition again?
Location at sea where ships can lower their anchors and wait for docking into ports.
Okay, anchorages. Typically, that is territorial waters, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's typically within the country. So that's something you should clarify, because if based on your definition alone, some countries might assume that it may not even be in their jurisdiction. So that's something you might need to clarify in the future if they ask. Anchorages, that's a very interesting term. Typically, everyone just uses ports, but since you've used anchorages, be prepared to clarify what that means. And if they ask jurisdictional questions like how do you enforce it? Well, number one, anchorages is applicable to the jurisdiction of the nation state involved. In this case, let's say Brunei, because the anchorages are typically near to the port, which is within the territorial waters of Brunei Darussalam. So typically all enforcement power belongs to that country, right? Something you should highlight there when you mention anchorages. Okay, Brunei Darussalam recommends that literal states consider joining Brunei Darussalam in exploring a sustainable blue economy. This is where the contention will begin. I can most certainly guarantee. Because number one, the first question a delegation would ask is, what is a blue economy? Of course, you will explain the blue economy as the utilization and exploration of resources in the seas. Is that correct?
Yes. For
Okay. For,
sustainability.
for sustainability, okay. So that is very contentious because, as you know, maybe in the Celebes, Sulu, Banda, and Malacca seas, Strait in this case, there's typically no contention there because it's understood Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines typically have agreements to jointly patrol, and in this case, some have agreed to set delimitation of boundaries so that they can explore the resources there. Like Philippines and Indonesia have an agreement on the boundaries of the water so that they can explore their blue economies, which is an effective way of addressing the Blue Initiative. But remember, when it comes to the bigger question of South China Sea, which what you're suggesting here is everyone explore, and much of the claimant states are in the South China Sea. How would you manage to convince members to support this idea, given the disputes that exist, as mentioned in my comment here to that proposal?
Like every literal member states should resolve their dispute with China, have a bilateral agreement to wait. Difficult.
I know, right? It's not as easy as it looks, and that is why, you know, I can tell you many stories of moments where you just blank out in when you're in a debate because it's such a complex question that, as I've explained here to you throughout the disputes of many maritime states, remember that it's very premature to assume that all Southeast Asian maritime states are in agreement with each other when in truth they have a lot of disagreements. Yeah. So like for instance, let's say, what example? Oh, anyway. So yeah, so were you about to answer the question or are you trying to check some sources first?
I'm trying to check.
Well, allow me just to explain the struggles of defending this position if it were me in your as the defense minister. Now, if I were making this recommendation, I would definitely consider the risky one because it opens a can of worms. Opens a can of worms in the sense that maritime states will once again assert their respective claims. So like South China Sea claimants. Let's go to Google, quick Googles, check. Let's look at the map to give everyone an idea of the complications of a blue economy vision. Because you don't even have to look at the Straits of Malacca or the Banda Sea. You just have to look at the South China Sea. Look, do you guys see the map, right?
Yes.
Look at that map. That is the situation you will potentially be dealing with in this meeting. Look at that map alone. The blue lines representing Vietnam's claims, which overlap Philippine claims, which overlap Malaysia claims. Brunei's claim overlaps Philippine and Malaysian claims. So how do you think countries would even begin to discuss something that is so highly disputed? Right? That's a big question already. What do you think, Suvan Rich? I'm curious to see what you think.
To me, this topic kind of not related to piracy. It's kind of out of the topic.
Okay.
And I want to focus more on the piracy and how to combat it.
Okay. So that brings back to the issue of exploring a blue economy. Do you think it's appropriate to recommend this in a defense minister's meeting? Because it doesn't really cover piracy. I mean, it
It,
wants to address the issues that pertain to piracy, but it opens a potential Pandora's box that would
Yeah.
lead to nationalist sentiment. That's another issue in diplomacy. So I don't know, Suvan Rich and Reza, I want you guys to discuss, because I think you guys have differing viewpoints and understanding of the idea of this proposal. So yeah, I leave you guys the floor to explain your points of view.
Like I wanted to address the root causes of maritime piracy, but without the blue economy, then
But couldn't that be? I don't necessarily think you can't address the social issues without the blue economy, because remember, the idea of law enforcement, apart from law enforcement, is also to help to serve the people. Now, how can you better serve the people? By actually committing resources on the part of government, of defense and law enforcement, to study the root causes of piracy. Right? You don't have to necessarily say we have to do blue economy as the only solution. There's so many ways to find answers to the factors that you've mentioned. And that it's the duty, actually, as a matter of fact, it's law enforcement's job to research and understand why piracy persists. It's not only the duty of the finance people, it's the duty of law enforcement as well, and defense in this case, because remember, defense takes many things into consideration: economic consideration, environmental consideration, things like that. So the realm of defense, it goes beyond just exploring blue economies. So like what Suvan Rich said, it's not really related, because in my opinion, the things that you want to ask with regards to what drove these people to piracy can be addressed in a proposal that involves law enforcement. Law enforcement can always do that. They can study it, review it through technical working groups with their neighboring countries. So you see, I hope you understand my train of thought in a way that you have to be creative, right? Will you risk opening a can of worms to debate, or would you try to address your questions in a less confrontational proposal in this case? I hope you get what I'm trying to say in this point, though. Because, I mean, look at this. Brunei Darussalam recommends all to thoroughly contemplate and possibly consider ratifying these legal instruments. That's okay, normal. But number 2, it recommends the increased confidence and capacity building, as well as studying the impacts of and the reasons, right? So you can always add that to these proposals. Apart from just capacity building and exercises, why shouldn't law enforcement try to learn about the root causes of piracy in Southeast Asia? They can always do that. It's it's normal. And I think Suvan Rich, you would agree they can do that. Wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at here is the blue economy, as Suvan Rich mentioned. This is the big problem when you talk about economy. Anything that involves the exploration of maritime resources, look at this map. This is the issue this is the Pandora's box that you will open the moment you talk about sea exploration. When you don't really have to go that far. You don't need to explore the seas to understand the problem of the fishermen or of the coastal people who go to piracy as a result, right? There's so many other alternatives and agencies that can address those problems. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight, the risk of blue economy. Anything that mentions that. Remember, South China Sea dispute is the most highly contentious, because if you look at this map, that red line, that U-shaped line, that's China's claims.
9-dash line.
The 9-dash line. And and you kind of understand what China's position is. They say they own all of it. And of course, the Philippines, Brunei, and other countries don't agree. So remember, just be aware. That's something you have to take into consideration. That's why when you review the final draft, be sure to assess all these potential issues. The same way with the finance people, with the ASEAN Monetary Unit, they have to assess the situation. Will they lose allies by recommending that? That's the kind of point that I'm trying to bring here. But yeah, so far the ICT, I'm not sure if you can shorten it so that you can fit it all in 2 pages. I will be asking the mentors group if we can have 3 pages, and I'll get back to you on that by tomorrow at least. But for the meantime, we should be prepared to limit our content to 2 pages, just in case, because they might not accept 3 pages. So let's just be ready on that. So I'm just going to read your concluding phase. Combating maritime piracy is an arduous process requiring resilient, stable, cohesive, committed, and collective efforts. The maritime framework under the umbrella of ASEAN has already come so far, and we shall not let our previous investments go to waste. We must review, rebuild, renew, and unite as one community with one vision, liberating the ASEAN seas from piracy and all its consequences. The delegation of Brunei Darussalam as chair, Noel Kipati solemnly affirms to advocate any enforceable proposals. Enforceable. Oops, someone's joining. Rigoberto. Okay. Let's wait for him to join. Who else is here? Okay. Yeah, so that's my comments so far. Unless you guys have any questions. So yeah, that's the first tip amongst, I'm sure a lot of you are first-time ASEAN participants or model event participants, and I understand the passion. I was just as passionate as you, but I like me now, I was reminded by my mentor to take into consideration the many factors that could arise out of my proposal. Trust me, I've made proposals that are just as controversial as yours during my time as ASEAN delegate for the Philippines. And I had to review those things because of the potential Pandora's box that could arise from that recommendation. So hopefully now I'm passing that knowledge to you guys so that you can be better prepared. But yeah, so tiptoe around that, see the things, a can of worms, Pandora's box. Yeah, a lot of stuff. You don't want to open a can of worms. And Savan Rich has made a very conscious statement here. He says, I don't want to risk talking about blue economy when there's a different solution. Absolutely. Do not always assume that there's only one solution. You have to be creative with these suggestions. If you think that it's too risky to talk about it here, try to add it in another area. In this case, maritime law enforcement. What can they do to address the problem? They should study this so that they can find a solution to that. That's how it's supposed to work. Or maybe you could just say agencies, ASEAN agencies should collaborate on addressing the root causes of maritime piracy through constructive dialogue and negotiations as to how we can better serve the people, in this case, the coastal people, and to have them reconsider, joining or resulting to piracy as a means of making a living. Let us give them the option, right? Things like that. So that's just one tip I noticed, because the blue economy, despite the benevolent idea, it's too risky, given, as you know, Southeast Asia, especially for global affairs students, the South China Sea is a powder keg of a situation. It can it can explode at any time. Luckily, we're still in relative peace, but let's not forget, ASEAN is one part of the game. You have bigger countries from the West and of the East that are involved. So yeah, we have to tread carefully. But yeah, good night, Sarayvuta, and I hope you found it useful. And of course, I'm open to any other questions, but if you're not, I know it's late. So if you have no more questions, you're free to sign off. So I'm just gonna go around the names. Hasavan Rich, do you have any questions? Nothing so far?
No.
I assume none. Rigoberto, any questions so far?
No, everything is clear.
Okay, good. Potiret, you have any questions for education?
No, not for now. Just you has explained pretty clear.
Okay. Monirot, any questions?
I think we need to revise our position paper first, and then we'll come back to you later.
Perfect. As you know, the education, great discussion. Good night, Savan Rich. But yeah, for those of you who are still here, just do what you got to do. I think you guys did a good paper overall. Of course, the education group, I would suggest you to be a bit more creative with the recommendations. You know, you don't have to make everything confrontational. You just have to have at least something that stands out from the crowd, right? Maybe you want us to strengthen the ASEAN University Networks mechanism to cover digital learning, right? To put focus on digital learning. Maybe you want us to invest, you want Southeast Asia to commit more towards these mechanisms so that we can better address the gaps that exist as a result of COVID-19 through digital learning. You can always utilize university networks. Maybe if there's an education forum, ASEAN Education Forum, you can always, is there an ASEAN Education Forum?
There is an foundation.
Sorry, is there?
Asian Foundation. There
ASEAN Foundation. So what do they do? Let me just go quick Google search. I know they do the ASEAN thing, ASEAN Foundation.
I heard they have also organized a model meeting.
Let's see, a cadre of leaders. So now, in your opinion, when you look at the ASEAN Foundation, are they doing enough to satisfy our target goals? Because if I'm not mistaken, the ASEAN Foundation typically, apart from preparing model ASEAN events, I don't think they're doing that much. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't done enough reading on it. I'm just reading based on this for people and ASEAN through various projects, etc. So in your opinion, do you think enough is being done by ASEAN Foundation, or do you want to propose a recommendation which empowers the ASEAN Foundation to take even greater steps in promoting Southeast Asian studies by utilizing digital learning as a platform for greater integration of our community, right? So something like that. You can be always creative. The ASEAN Foundation is a good mechanism. How can we improve that mechanism is the question. And that's why I'm counting on the education ministers to think about it, right? How can we improve pre-existing mechanisms to better serve our agenda? That's why, like you could actually mention ASEAN Foundation in the first proposal. Instead of just having SOMED meetings, why not strengthen ASEAN Foundation and other educational mechanisms of ASEAN to tackle, to integrate e-learning as one of the alternatives, right? So these are some things that I want you guys to think about moving forwards, because our job is not only to create new things, but also to improve things that already exist. I think that's the most important tip. Like, for instance, same with ADMM. The job of the defense ministers is not only to create new stuff or propose new things, it's to improve and strengthen pre-existing mechanisms in place. So I think that's the number one tip that I would have. Of course, back in the day, I wanted to always create new stuff, be creative and stuff like that. But you can also be creative at the same time by strengthening what is already there. So when you make recommendations, have that in mind. Look at the mechanisms there, the associations, foundations, advisory councils that exist. Look at what they're doing right now and try
how
to
we
find
can,
a way. Yeah, correct. What you were saying just now?
and how we can improve them.
Correct. Yeah, because remember, it's there. The only way is up, basically, in terms of their functions. That's why, apart from doing research on like reports and things like that, look at the mechanisms that are in place. Like the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, typically is a discussion between head of state. What should you do? Well, look at what they've done so far in the last 7 years or something like that, and make a recommendation on how this can be strengthened, right? How can these mechanisms be improved? So that's just another thing, because the purpose of this exercise is not only to encourage uh, participants to be creative with new ideas, but it's also to find solutions to pre-existing problems and find ways to improve them. That's one thing. That's one thing you should consider also moving forward. And remember, don't be mindful that come the actual meeting, that you're not only preparing for your resolution papers, sorry, position papers, but you're also ready to look at all the recommendations of your counterparts in the draft paper, which we will go through together. Things like that. Anyway, 9:30. Well, good discussion. That's enough of me. I'm running out of voice. I'm running out of voice right now, to be honest with you. We've been here for like 2 hours and 30 minutes. So hopefully you take to heart the input, and I'm looking forward to seeing your documents by Sunday, 14th February. No pressure. It's all good. Discuss with your partners. I like the dynamic, so I encourage Monirot and Putirit to talk, engage each other more, exchange ideas. As you've seen from Reksa and Sovanrich, they seem to have a clash of opinion on certain topics, which is good. You're not always supposed to agree together, but it's how you work together on these issues that's the most important, really. It's fine to have disagreements. It's normal. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. So no more questions, right? No more. All right. I know you're all tired and there's class tomorrow. So I wish you all good. Good. How was your quiz, by the way, Reasa, or midterm? Was it midterm?
Yeah, it was midterm. And it
So
was
okay.
math. It was
Was it
math.
bad? It was what?
Math.
It was math.
Yeah, math.
Okay. Oh, I hate math. I don't like math. Anyways, but yeah, hopefully that was okay.
Yeah, it was
Everything's good. I'm more of a history person, so I have my biases. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys have a good week, I guess, over the next few days. Good luck with your quizzes if you have them. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat. And Reasa, just for the sake of all, please upload the
yeah. Oh wait.
the video. Yeah.
Everyone, like, about the simulation, are we still doing it or not?
Well, you have two options. You have the option of just you want to do the simulations, or you want to practice like how we did just now on the topics, because that in a way is already like a simulation, because I'm playing devil's advocate. now devil's advocate in the sense that I will question all your proposals, and you will debate me basically. And you have the option, but like I said, the simulation is for you guys to decide. I give you the full power to make a decision amongst yourselves, because my job there is to observe, and I will not talk at all. I will make sure I will observe how you guys debate on these topics and see how you can get around them. So yeah, you guys still doing it though?
Or do you want to discuss it in the group chat? Or do you want to discuss
You
it?
guys can talk in Telegram, debate if you want, or do you want me to assign some people you will debate with? Let's see. I'm gonna make it exciting. So Van Rich and Reasa, how about you guys debate on the issue of the blue economy? I want to see how you guys. I want to see how you guys debate. I want one opposition and one proposition, and just talk in Telegram or amongst yourselves, and give me some feedback on how you guys did. Same with Monirot and Putirit. Debate each other on certain topics you disagree with. This is to prepare you for the eventual battle, eventual confrontation with other heads of state, other ministers and senior officials. So hopefully by then you're ready. But yeah, like I said, it's up to you guys if you want to debate each other. It's completely
No.
optional.
I don't want to debate with my teammate, but I think it is better that you debate our position paper.
Yeah. Me and my minister are in the same team, and you are in the opposition team.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we mostly agree with each other.
Okay. I'll be very happy to be the devil in this case. But anyways, but only if you need it. I feel like you seem to be prepared, in my opinion. Of course, there's just some things you need to correct, but overall, you should be fine. So be ready to debate. Don't just host the meeting, debate. That's the most key when you do these meetings. Okay, I'm done. So 9:30, perfect. All right. Have a good evening, guys. Have a good night in this case. Hopefully all of you ate already. That's good. Anyways, good night, everybody. I'm gonna stop screen share.
Bye.
Good night, Rigoberto, Chan Manrot,
Bye.
Utret,
Bye
Retsa.
bye.
Good night.
Bye. Adios.
Adios.
Adios.